Welcome to HipMojo, special edition for you. Shows 21 and 22 bundled into one. You'll notice we're wearing the same clothes, so why lie? Show 21, which is going to be the first segment, we're going to talk about a recap of 2011, stories that stood out. And then what are we going to do in show 22?
In 22, we're going to make some predictions. You're going to make some anti-predictions.
I'm going to make some anti-predictions, because all of us wannabe experts always say this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And let's face it, if we bat 300, we're doing well. Usually one or two things happens. A few of them don't really happen, but we pretend like they did. And then the next year we come back saying these are the predictions. So I'm going to go with the anti-predictions.
All right, so let's
get
dive
started.
in.
2011. Okay, so pick, what are the three main stories that stood out for you?
You know, it's this horse has been flogged to death. We flogged the corpse a bit, but obviously, that was a bad joke.
Very bad one, but go on.
Obviously, Steve Jobs, huge tech story of the year, his passing.
Was it a bigger deal when he resigned? Because I think people knew that if his hands were gonna let go of the wheel, then it definitely wasn't good news. Was that the bigger news, or was it his death, which was not anticlimactic really at all? It was sad, and it was another round of outpouring of emotions. But I was a bit maybe more moved
By his resignation.
by his resignation.
I think his resignation was more meaningful in terms of what it meant for Apple. But no, honestly, yeah, his death was definitely a much bigger story.
Yeah, that's true. And also I remember at the office, there was a sort of more somber vibe the day after he passed away, obviously. Okay, so Steve Jobs passes away, horrible, very young. The man accomplished more in the last 10 years, let alone the last 30 years, than most people do in their lifetime. We all get that. But the story I want to touch on the, let's say, point one, Steve Jobs is, do you think that this, when Saddam Hussein dies, not comparing him to Saddam Hussein, is there a power vacuum, or is there a leadership vacuum where it's possible for an Amazon or a Google or a Microsoft to come?
Yeah, I would say there's a leadership and an influence vacuum. There's going to be people who want to replace him as the talisman. There's going to be people inside Apple who want to grab control of the company or get more influence, and there's going to be companies that want to kind of displace Apple as the media darling.
Is there a single company? Because I think of Amazon, as much as Google, the whole Eric Schmidt being on the board ages ago, obviously Microsoft being almost Apple envious at many points in its history, even though Microsoft keeps kicking ass and you'd think they'd be very happy. I think this was the year where Jeff Bezos said, wait a second, before Steve Jobs became the darling of the tech and media space, Jeff Bezos, was the darling. My face was on
but
Time
Jeff
magazine.
Bezos was never the media darling or the cult figure that
He was on the
Steve
cover
Jobs
of Time as the man of the person of the year in '99. He's
yeah, but he's not a household name the way.
Okay,
Jobs
fair
was.
enough. Do you think Amazon is the main company that's trying to go after Apple's lunch?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. In fact, I saw a great infographic this week on how Amazon is pretty much going after everyone's lunch. And I don't think it's that, hey, Steve Jobs died and they jumped in to fill the vacuum. Obviously, this is something they planned for and they've been working for years. But yeah, I would definitely say they're the one.
So here's the thing. If you had invested, according to the same infographic, if you had invested $30,000 in Apple and Amazon in 1997, guess which one would be worth more today?
Amazon?
Yes, Amazon. So that's interesting, but that's unfair because in finance you don't just care about return, you care about time horizon. So Amazon, that's literally that's 15 years of time, whereas Apple, the massive appreciation has come over the last, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, or 5, 6 years. Now the thing that's more interesting is that before we move on to the next point that stood out in this year, if you had to pick where you're going to place your dollar,
right? Considering
that Apple is worth $340 billion. And Amazon is only worth $98 billion.
That's all.
That's all. Where would you put your money?
I would put my money in Amazon. One, I'm a little bit nervous. I know Steve Jobs probably planned out a lot of big things to carry them for the next couple of years. I'm nervous that some of it won't get implemented well and they'll actually lose a bit to a lot of their lead. But also Amazon has its fingers in so many things right now that I just see more potential for growth and stability there.
Okay, next story.
All right. I like Siri.
Okay, do you really?
Yeah, well, I don't even have an iPhone, but yeah, I think Siri's really cool. I think I don't think a lot of people realize how important it's going to be. It's really going to change the way we interact with devices. More phones are going to have this kind of technology, and there's a lot of potential there to just totally recreate the mobile space.
Do you think that Siri is going to be the gateway to Apple TV? Where we're just going to say, show me, Jersey Shore, where you see a nipple slip? Make it happen, Siri.
It's possible. I think Siri is also going to be the gateway to those cars in Demolition Man that you'd get into and you'd talk and the car would drive you somewhere. I think it's that kind of. I guess it's the closest. It's our first step into kind of pseudo artificial intelligence. I think it's really cool.
Okay, so counterpoint. Now, counterpoint to that, we hear about Apple TV, Google TV. One step further, or back is YouTube. I pick YouTube's dominance this year in online video as my second story, or I guess my 2B to your 2A. I think YouTube did what? 1 trillion views. They basically spent anywhere from 100 million conservative to $250 million in upfront commitments. They're sort of the only company doing this now, where they basically go out and they go the way ABC or does its upfronts, the way NBC does its upfronts. We're going to go out there and we're going to basically guarantee all this exclusive content. I think YouTube galvanizing its grip on online video is probably one of the biggest stories. Anyway, in video.
Yeah, definitely galvanizing it. I don't think there's any room now for really anyone to take them on in the video.
No, nobody's going to take them on. I do think that the portals are in a unique position. I think Yahoo, MSN, and AOL okay, you look like you're going to laugh.
Are you kidding me? I want to watch video. Where do I go? I don't even Google for video. I go straight to YouTube and search.
Okay, you made my point. YouTube. Why is basically, despite the fact that they got 1 trillion views this year, why did YouTube go out and guarantee all this revenue? It's because they want to increase the quality of the content.
Right.
My guess is, I'm working on this article about the 3 outcomes of this YouTube initiative. It'll either be a disaster where they're going to waste all this money, and in the end, it's still skateboarding dogs and cats falling in toilets, which are going to be popular. And then at the other extreme is, oh my God, all of a sudden users flock to this premium content, and advertisers jump up saying, YouTube, you are the holy grail. I personally think, though, that users will continue to go on YouTube and see this random stuff. But, I mean, advertising does make the world go around. I think the portals are going to be in a much better position going forward. And I'm including in the portals Hulu to some extent, saying that these guys who basically are limiting content, taking a very, very curated approach. And disclaimer, we partner with all of them. We don't particularly care if YouTube grows or Yahoo grows or AOL or MSN.
As long as they can give you views.
And yeah, exactly. So we're fine. I'm not picking any favorites here. But I just think that from an advertising perspective, I'm not surprised if YouTube will always be tonnage and they're aiming for more premium content.
YouTube, though, is just another company that Amazon is competing with. Like, you see them competing with Hulu. You see them competing with...
Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix. Even iTunes. For movie and show downloads. Really, I think what would galvanize YouTube as the video leader is if I could actually go watch my favorite TV show on YouTube. I don't understand why that hasn't happened. I imagine it's just pig-headed egos. Like, I think both YouTube and the networks would have been better off if they would have just cut to the chase and done that already. But I think on that level, if anyone can be a viable competitor to YouTube down the line, it might also be Amazon.
I wonder, just on that note, before going to your next big story, I wonder if not to segue into predictions, but I wonder if we're going to see Viacom and YouTube settle their lawsuit. I'd like to intermediate that. I'd like to be the mediator going in and telling them that they're both crazy and that this is the solution. Let's end the litigation. Not going to happen. But I wonder if that's going to happen, and that'll open up the floodgates to more premium content. All right, next story of the year.
I guess the next story of the year for me, and I think you're going to agree with this, and crap, we talked about it last week, but Arab Spring and Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter actually turned out to have a use. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, it's funny. Fred Wilson, investor in Twitter and many, many other wonderful things, says that he looks out for things that are companies that are basically mocked and misunderstood for the greatest potential investments and businesses. And he goes, Twitter, people were like, oh, what is this crappy thing? I ate this, I'm pooping, whatever. And now look at, how much it accelerated.
And the poop tweets are really interesting now that Twitter supports photo as well.
Yes, that's disturbing, but visual imagery, but very cool nonetheless. So yeah, I think technology or social media accelerating revolutions, pretty cool. All right, pick one more thing that stood out between the 2 items.
Okay. I want to pick a disappointment. Google Plus. Big story, a lot of buzz, but really it hasn't gone anywhere. Oh my God, they announced business pages. Like, really, who cares?
You're so mean to Google.
I'm not mean to Google. I love Google, but I just think Google
evidently, I would hate to see what you say about people you hate.
Well,
I got your Christmas card. I'm just kidding. Okay. Well, okay. One of this guy, his name is Paul Allen, not that Paul Allen, but some guy named Paul Allen came out and said, "Look, we have 62 million users. They're not commenting on active users." Don't you think that, is it so hard for Google to be viewed as a success in social media that they can't do anything to please?
Well, they haven't done anything original. Thanks for calling me a hipster.
I'm sorry, it's not a bad thing. But I'm saying, like, you know.
Well, the Google Plus didn't do anything new. We already had Facebook. Why the F do I need Google Plus? It's like when Microsoft, they're launching, social, and they used to have Wallop. It's just like, hey, we're going to clone MySpace. But, like, you're not going to go anywhere in social media if you just rip off an idea that already exists.
I can't believe we didn't really talk much about Facebook hitting 800 million users, but I think that's fitting because we're going to talk about them in the next segment / show 22, where we talk about. So the number one story for you of 2011, we sort of touched on this last week, is Steve Jobs. Of all the things.
Yeah, it excites me the least, but I think objectively speaking, yeah. What would be yours?
You know, maybe because I've got such a video view centric. I think while Steve Jobs was the sentimental, I do think this was the year where video through especially YouTube, the trillion views, like think of that, the trillion views. There's 7 billion people in the world. Not all of them even are on YouTube. So they generate a trillion views. All the money that they forked over, you know, it might be too little too late for a lot of video companies out there, and we'll touch on that in the next segment's show. But I actually think YouTube just galvanizing video was probably the number one story. All right, that's been the show on...
Show 21.
Yeah, show 21 on 2011 recap. Next show, basically right after this, but you'll watch it next week, will be the predictions for 2012 or my anti-predictions for 2012. We'll be right back.